Welcome to Leaders Edge Network. This is part 4 of our kvCore training, which will focus on the highly functional CMA platform, CorePRESENT. My name is Deanna Faye Brown. I'm the team leader of the Connection Realtors Mega Icon team and a member of the Leaders Edge Network. As you've gone through this kvCore journey with us, let's remember where we've been so far. First, we've talked about how to activate and set up your profile. Then in week 2, we went on to talk about personalizing your website, giving it your own personality. From there, we talked about how to create and manage your database, your CRM in kvCore. And now in session 4, we're going to spend our time today talking about CorePRESENT, a highly functional CMA builder built into kvCore that not only gives you the ability to create CMAs, but it will take you 1 and 2 and 3 steps further to help you understand what data and what information in those CMAs is compelling, interesting, and motivating to your buyers and sellers. Let's get started. What we're going to focus on today is something that I don't know a whole lot of people realize kvCore is capable of, and that's creating a CMA and also a listing presentation. You can do one, the other, or both consolidated. And I'm going to show you a little bit about that functionality today. And what's super cool about it is that not only is it tied to the MLS to be able to generate data, but the result, the product that goes out to the client is interactive. And then based on whatever the client does with that presentation, you're going to get analytics back so that you'll be able to see what parts of that presentation they zoned in on, if they even looked at it. And in particular, when they look at the CMA and the properties that are being featured and compared for pricing purposes, you'll be able to see sort of where their mindset is. Where do they spend most of their time or interest? So let's take a look. I'm logged into my kvCore account right now. And to get to the CMA product within kvCore, it's called CorePRESENT. So you're going to go over to the left-hand side to marketing, and you're going to find CorePRESENT. Once I go into CorePRESENT, it's going to take a moment, open a new window, and it's going to bring me here to the CorePRESENT dashboard. Now, unlike our initial profile setup and our website setup, there are only a couple of very minor things that you might want to do to customize at the start with CorePRESENT. And to do that, you can go up here in the top right-hand corner to customize settings. I'm just going to show you real quick these couple of things here: about me and testimonials. Both of these features are designed to pull from your profile in kvCore. So let me just click on one of these and edit it. So if you take a look at my profile in CorePRESENT, this is my bio that I entered in my kvCore account. But I do have the ability here on the right-hand side to edit it. I can completely change it. I can add to it. I can expand on it right from here. This will not, if I make changes here, it will not transfer those changes back to kvCore, which means that those changes would not appear on my website, but this would just update the slide that ultimately will be inserted in my presentations, in my CMA and listing presentations that I generate in CorePRESENT. Okay, so that's about me, your bio. The other thing is testimonials. Testimonials will not automatically copy over from your kvCore into CorePRESENT, but you can very easily, like I did, I just went back to my kvCore. So I have the 2 windows open at the top. You just want to go over to, move everybody's head here. Go over to your profile. Actually, it's my website. So go to Website Manager, and then you want to go to Site Content. Remember, this is where you enter your testimonials. And I simply clicked on the Edit button for each one that I wanted to copy over, highlighted the content to copy it, and then went over here and pasted it. And then once I added the testimonial, made sure to add the name of the person, the client or colleague that provided that information. And then when I was done, I hit save and continue. Okay, so this is again another slide for testimonials that will ultimately you'll be able to insert and leverage in the presentations that come out of CorePRESENT. Okay, so those are pretty easy things to be able to get started and get going. The other thing that you can do is take a look at the different formats that CorePRESENT offers. These primarily are going to differ from traditional to modern to luxury in sort of look and feel. This is going to be about personal preference. It's going to be about what you think, what style blends well with some of your other marketing and branding that you're doing with social media, with any of your print marketing and so forth. And you can see within each of the themes, like right now I'm in traditional. Within traditional, I can choose something that's maybe less graphic intense or more graphic intense. And you'll see here in traditional, it's got kind of a rounded feel, easy to follow, the hourglass. Now, take a note of this slide, what buyers want from their agents. Let me take a look at modern presentation. So this is the same content, what buyers want from their agents, but a different feel. Much more like the tile, sort of modern, clean, much less in terms of graphics and color saturation. So again, these are just all out personal preference on the left-hand side with customization, okay? And as you build presentations, you can choose different layouts depending on what you feel your client will best respond to as well. So nothing set in stone there. Just make sure you address the bio and the testimonials as you get started. Okay, so now here we are back at the main dashboard for CorePRESENT. Notice that I do still have my kvCore open, and then my CorePRESENT is open separately. There are 4 main functions that you can accomplish in CorePRESENT. The first one, win the listing. So this is where you're really talking about building a CMA for sellers. Next is win the offer. This is where you're talking about building a case with buyers for how to best position themselves with an appropriate offer in their market. Then you have presentation information where you can go ahead and build a listing presentation right here in CorePRESENT. And then you can also do a buyer tour where you can add MLS. You can do your research through the MLS. And if you wanted to present the buyer with maybe a list of properties that you either wanted them to review or a list of properties that you've literally physically intended to take them on tour on, maybe in the upcoming weekend, you can build out a presentation that you can then send out in a link format where they can review each property, click on each property interactively, and view the details of it as they move from house to house or as they see what you have laid out for them for their tour, okay? So let's take a look at how this functionality will actually work. Let's start with win the listing. And the one thing that I will mention as an aside, because I've brought it up before, particularly when we talked about website personalization, customization, is that if you might recall, I had a problem with my MLS where my kvCore account was set up with the wrong MLS and I got that fixed. But actually that problem sort of further translated into CorePRESENT. So if you have that problem where you try to replicate some of what I'm doing today and you're not producing any results, and you're like me and had a problem with your MLS, then most likely that problem may have carried forward a little bit into your CorePRESENT, and you just have to pull in the kvCore, the inside real estate support folks to help resolve that. So ironically, even though my MLS is bright, I'm in the middle of working with the engineers to get my CorePRESENT resolved. So I appreciate, Ashley, that you're here because I'm going to leverage a property from Garden State MLS that I found under Christina's name, okay? I wanted to make sure that I took an EXP listing today. So let's pull up, I'm going to enter the property address. And I just want to make sure I have the right street or town. I think it was Boundbrook. Whoops. So here to get started, I'm going to enter the property address. And be leery of Google always trying to update your information. Once I enter the property address, it will try to pull in some data, what it believes to be the correct information about the property, the type of property that it is, the square footage, the bedroom count, and the year it was built. You do want to review this information. I have found in multiple tests that sometimes the bedroom count does not come over correctly. So it's worth taking a quick review. It's absolutely going to impact the next steps of this process if any of this information is materially off. So in this case, this is actually a 4-bedroom house. So I'm going to go ahead and change to 4-bedroom. Everything else looks good. And so I'm going to go to comparable details. Okay. This is where it really gets cool. So what it does based on your MLS is it's going to create a map. On the left-hand side, I'm going to be able to manipulate the criteria. So I'm just in the generation stage. I'm just still building this CMA. This is nothing that the client sees as of yet. I'm in the edit function right now. If you take a look at the blue circle, this tells you the geographic area that is currently pulling into the CMA. Okay, and if I scroll down a little bit, you'll see at the bottom, there are 4 categories in color: the blue, green, orange, yellow, and red. Okay, those colors designate the status in the MLS. So right now, my search to be able to build a CMA is only actually pulling in 3 properties. So if I go back to my map and take a look at it, whoop, I don't want you to see the gray, but you'll see that our subject property, the 622 Legion, is the orange house that's in the middle of the circle. And then right behind it, it's kind of hard to see, but I can zoom in to separate them a little bit. You'll see that there's a little green caret behind it. Okay, that green caret represents the one active match that we have in our MLS search. Okay. We also have a couple of red carets. Here's one. And then there's another one closer to the top. I'm trying to zoom out so it doesn't darken for you. Okay. Now, as I build the CMA, what I have the ability to do is to actively click on any of the carets that appear on this map, whether they're in that blue circle or not, to see details on that property. Okay, so let me start by clicking on that. Let me X out of this one. Let me click on the green one. I have to zoom in. There we go. Okay, so this is our subject property, 622 Legion. It gives you the bedrooms and the square footage. Okay, now that actually looks like it pulled in as a comparable. We don't want it as a comparable because it's actually our subject property. So what I can do is I can remove it from the comps. The challenge for this, I think part of the reason that this is happening in this case is because this property actually was sold earlier this year. So it's coming in as a recent comparable because of the sale less than 6 months ago. So I'm just going to go ahead and remove it from the comps. I don't want the sale of that property earlier in the year to impact the data that I'm sending to the client. But let's take a look at some of these other properties that are in gray. The reason that they're in gray is because kvCore and CorePRESENT have identified them as potential comps for this analysis, but it's up to you whether you want to include them or not. So let's click on one. So here we have a situation like 608 Thomas. It's giving us a sale date, number of bedrooms, and square footage. So this is a 3-bedroom versus our 4-bedroom, but it is only 4% smaller in terms of square footage. So I'm going to go ahead and add that as a comp. Once I do that, it's going to change from gray to red because now it's a closed transaction that's going to be added to my sold matches. So now my sold matches at the bottom go from 2 to 3. Okay. And you can do the same thing with each of the comps that CorePRESENT is offering to you. Now this one sold back in June, but it's significantly larger. Okay. So I don't think I want to include that one in my review. This one closed just this month. Again, smaller with 3 bedrooms, but the square footage is pretty close. So I'm going to add that to my comps. So this is what you can do to continue to build out your CMA for your client. You ultimately want to get to the point where you feel that for your client, for the market area, and for the market that we're in, that you have significant financial data to be able to present to them here, okay, in your active, your pending, and your sold. If when you generate this, this map and it produces too few results, one of the first places that you might want to start before you look on the left-hand side to adjust other criteria, you can start by expanding your geographic area. It defaults to 1 mile radius from the subject property, but maybe you want to expand that out to a 3-mile radius. Once I do that, it's going to take a minute to pull data from the MLS, and now look how my results have changed. I've now pulled in additional sold matches, and I do see, let's take a look. I do see one in green that now reflects an active property. The problem is that it wasn't part of my original search, so I would still have to go ahead and decide to include that in my comps. Reason being, it's 31% larger than the square footage I indicated for the subject property. Okay, so if I wanted to include that one, all I have to do is click on add to comps and it would appear in my numbers below. Okay.
Is there a way to see based on condition?
Condition.
Like pictures? Like, is there any, I didn't know what the add details, like underneath the additional details.
Help me out. Where are you looking?
Like when you clicked on the
Oh,
button.
click on that. You want to be, okay,
details.
let's click on a property. Yes. So if I wanted to
Oh,
actually,
there we go.
there you go. I'm sorry. So
That's
great
okay.
question, Ashley. Thank you. So if you wanted to see the property details, take a look at the picture, maybe understand a little bit more about the background of the house. If you click on that more info, this is what you're going to get. And you will also have the ability to scroll through the pictures as well. Okay. It'll zone in on the map for you. Okay. So even at this point, before you've even talked about what the client experience is, this is going to be very interactive for you. And in particular, if you're dealing with a really specialized property or a very unique location, you can really either expand your geography or zone in on your criteria to build a CMA that very specifically works with your subject property. Okay. If I wanted to change any of these other criteria, I simply click on the plus button and can, check or uncheck. Like if I go to bed count, for example, maybe I know that in this house, the 4th bedroom is really small, almost more like a closet than a bedroom. So I don't want to eliminate 3-bedroom properties from my search. So all I have to do is slide that blue button down to the 3, and now it will capture all 3 and 4-bedroom properties in the results here on the map. Okay. I can also look at square footage. Maybe I wanted to give consideration to a basement or pull out basement square footage, whatever the case may be. Okay, and same thing with lot size. Now, let's say you're running this report and you know very specifically that there's a property that does not appear based on the criteria that you've entered, based on the geography that you've entered, but you want it to be included in your CMA. You also have the ability at the bottom on the left to enter an MLS ID. So if you know the ID number of that particular property, you can simply enter it here, enter the number, click on this blue caret, and it too will appear here on your map. And then once you find it on the map, just go ahead and click on the caret and add it to your comps. Okay. So let's say I'm at the point where I'm satisfied with what I have highlighted as comps for this analysis. I'm satisfied with these numbers. At this point, I'm only looking at sold match. I understand that, but I just really want you to, at this point, understand the functionality at the Iterating the CMA. And once it does that, this is what's going to come up on my screen. If at this point I wanted to stop and just share the CMA with my client, this is going to be very similar to what they're going to see. I also am going to have the ability, and I want to take a moment to go through some of these details, but we will also have the opportunity to move on from this step and build an entire presentation around this CMA. I'm going to show you that as well. So the CMA itself is going to reference our subject property, the date that it was prepared. It's going to give some data to the reviewer that explains that we have 26 total properties, and these are how they split out by category. So it's going to give them the key. There's also the ability here to still go back and edit search criteria so that if you wanted to go back and make changes, you could. But the ultimate product going to the client will explain how it searched on square footage and how it searched on bedroom count. Okay. Now, once I scroll down, there are a few things that you can consider doing here as you further build out your CMA. Notice how interactive, if I start here, so you have options here at the top to review your results, look at trends, features, estimates, and then outliers. So if we click on view results, notice how the map comes up, zoned in on all of the properties, in this case, the 26 properties that we've pulled in and all closed, which is why they're all red. And I can scroll down on the left-hand side and click on any of these to see those details about that property, the pictures, some additional information, just like you would if you were searching maybe on realtor.com or Zillow or within the MLS, right? But think of it from the client experience. From a trend standpoint, you're able to review the results in based on certain criteria. So if you wanted to change your sort, you can do that here. If you wanted to take a look by price, if you wanted to take a look by days on the market, you can do that there. Next, you have features. Features, you can turn things on or off. So if you wanted to be able to zone in, like maybe you as the client only wanted to review things that had a basement, only wanted to review homes that had 2 bathrooms, you could click that, you could toggle that features button to on, and then further drill down on the properties that were of interest to you. After features, you have estimates. Now, this can be a very interesting feature that you may or may not want to use. I have not seen it myself in practice, but when I've viewed other demonstrations, there are some platforms, some CorePRESENT platforms, and I'm not sure if it's because of the way our platform is with EXP, but there are some CorePRESENT platforms that automatically offer you the Zillow, the Zestimate, to include. Some clients, if they particularly are into technology and are into that, might want to see that Zillow estimate as part of this presentation. Maybe also you have a mother-in-law who has a very specific opinion of what the property should sell for. So let's just say Mom B, and let's say she thinks the house should sell for $800,000. Okay, so once I add that to the estimate, then you'll see what happens. I just have to adjust my range. So I said Mom B. Okay. So once I click add, then look at what happens. So now my sort of at a glance bar here, that's going to give me some breakdown of the properties to be highlighted for the CMA. Now look at how it shrinks in order to be able to accommodate Mom B's estimate of $800,000. This can be particularly valuable if maybe you have multiple sellers that all have different opinions of where a value should land for listing price. You can go in and list all those sellers and list their opinions so that when they collectively review the CMA, they'll be able to look at the data and see visually how their number plays out against what's happening in the market. If you did want to go ahead and add the Zillow estimate, you can do the same thing here. Just call it Zillow, and let's say Zillow said 600,000 and hit the add button. And then once I X out of it, you'll see that the Zillow would appear here. Okay. So understand that you can leverage estimates in a number of different ways. And then you also have the ability to identify outliers, where it recognizes that some properties that might be included here exceed certain percentages, either because of the square footage or the bedroom information, and you can pull those out of the data. Okay, but this is where we're looking to continue to build a CMA. If all I wanted to do at this point was save this data, if I was satisfied with this information, then I would click this button up at the top, Save CMA Only. Once I've gone through all of these components across this bar, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, recognize that if you continue to scroll down, there's going to be a tile functionality, a lot like what we see in kvCore and SkySlope. I know for .loop users, this tile functionality is very common in different tech platforms. It's got a clean look, but it's also highly functional. So let's say I was interested in understanding a little bit more about selling pace. As a client or as the agent preparing the CMA, you can click on this and it will show you, based on all of the properties that we pulled into our analysis, where they were price point wise and how many days that they were on the market. So this can really help when you're having the conversation with certain clients about, let's take a look at this concentration of areas that, we can maybe go a little bit higher to the, say, 375 or 400, but look where we see the greatest concentration, where we see the fastest number of sales or properties priced in this range, in this market. So depending on your results, this could be a great way to help if your client is motivated by time and a quick sale. This could be a great slide for you to address. You can also take a look at, now I can't do fresh versus stale. The reason that this is grayed out right now is because we didn't pull in any active or pending into our CMA. We only have closed transactions. If this included active or pending, then we would be able to click on this and it would tell us how fresh, how recent the data is. Are we looking at properties that have been on the market a week or 2 weeks, properties that have been on the market 6 months? That's what fresh or stale would tell us. We can also take a look at a comparison of the average list price to the sale price. So, obviously we're in probably the wackiest market many of us have ever seen, or at least it's right up there with 2008. So you're going to see a lot of sale price exceeding list price. But the challenge in that conversation is that you want to make sure that you're still continuing to price your property correctly to be able to drive in the offers that then ultimately can improve your sale price. Okay. If you try to get too aggressive and anticipate selling above market, then sometimes you're going to turn people off. So that's an important conversation to understand how to talk through this data with your clients. Okay, so again, these are all of the interactive functions that you'll be able to maneuver with your clients, review with your clients. So let's say for this example that we just want to go ahead and save it as a CMA. So I'm going to click on Save CMA Only. It's going to take a minute. And then what it's going to do is it's going to take me back to my main screen. And now you will see a project there in my CorePRESENT dashboard referencing this project for 622 Legion. It does take a minute to generate, so don't be alarmed by that. Now, what I'm going to be able to do, and I'll show you in a minute how it works, is once I get back to my dashboard, I'm going to be able to save that analysis for later. It'll be there as a project. I can go ahead and email that CMA out to a client by pulling that client in from my kvCore database. I can also, copy a link that I can text out. So here I want to go ahead and it's prompting me, do I want to add a client? So I'm going to go ahead. back when we talked about adding our template of clients, I added myself as a test client. So I'm going to go ahead and pick myself so I can show you what that looks like. Okay, and now it confirms that the report has been saved. So if I go back here, just click on CorePRESENT and go back, scroll down. So we remember at the top, this is where we first landed on our dashboard. If I just scroll down, now you're going to see that I have a project that was just added on today's date for 622 Legion. Okay, I can go ahead and email it out here by clicking on this email button. I can create a subject line. So let's say, you can preview your message and then you can hit send. Okay. So what happens is, let's take a look at what happens on the receiving end with that type of message. So here it's coming from me, Deanna Faye Brown as the agent, going to Deanna Brown as the client. So you'll see Deanna has sent you an email about CorePRESENT for 622 Legion. So here's my message. Looking forward to hearing your feedback on this. So let me go ahead and click on the CMA. Now, again, remember, this is the client's experience, not the agent's experience. Okay, so I have my cover reminding me the property that I'm reviewing, 622 Legion. And now I'm going to start to see the data. It goes right into the data for the property. And notice that on any of these, I can click on that caret to get the detail of that property. Okay. As I continue to work through, now it's going to take that screen that showed me almost like a timeline, but rather than in timeline form, it's going to be in dollar value form. Remember, we talked about adding Zillow, adding the mother-in-law's, perspective. So now the client has the ability to click on the properties on this dollar line, if you will, to be able to see those details. Okay, they can see all the list of properties on the left. They can click on any one at this point, or they can go back to the map and click on the individual carets. But as they maneuver through, they're going to be able to see all of the pictures, the photos, all of the details, and they'll be able to also read the description coming from the MLS. If at any point they just want to go back to the presentation, they simply have to click out and then they go back to the actual slide. Okay. If you wanted to see information about the average, notice that you can click on that again, takes you back to the details. And you can also do the same thing as a client. Remember, I said you can toggle features on and off. So maybe 26 is too many properties for you to sort of digest. You want to drill down on that a little bit as a client. You can do that here. So understand, it's very interactive. You're not just sending your client a PDF anymore. You're sending them something that they're going to be able to maneuver and manipulate and investigate to their comfort level to understand a little bit about what's going on in the market. This helps them better understand the market, and it helps them determine what questions they might have. It's also going to help you determine where their focus might be, where their concerns might be, or where their motivations might be to help properly set the pricing value for a listing. Okay, we looked at those tiles from the agent standpoint, and now here are those same tiles from the client standpoint. Again, they can click on any of these to see the data, to see the graphics, but then they're also going to get an explanation of what those graphics represent. Okay, and so this is the last page of the CMA. So understand high level of functionality, interactive, and it's going to give you the ability as well to go back. Let me take you back to kvCore. It's going to give you the ability at a moment's notice to go back and update this CMA going forward. So let's say you send this out to the seller for 622 Legion. You have a number of conversations and the seller was unsure. Do I want to do anything now? Do I want to just get through the holidays and maybe revisit this in February or March? So maybe you run it now. Maybe ultimately the seller decides they're not quite ready, but you've marked a follow-up for February 1st. So you can go right into your CorePRESENT. So go into your kvCore. From your kvCore, go to your CorePRESENT, okay? Go right down to this project and click on Update. Once you click on Update, it's going to take you back through the same process that we just went through to build it initially, but now it's going to pull in current data for whatever the MLS, wherever the market stands at that moment in time. It'll do the same thing. It'll work you through all those steps. You can continue to customize it, expand your geography, change your criteria, add manual MLS listings if you wish. And then ultimately, you'll be able to get to the point where you can share this presentation again with the client. Okay? Does anybody have any questions on this piece so far? Just check the chat. Melissa, can you see the screen now? I'm sorry, I'm just realizing.
I have a question, Diana. I think I was trying to save the CMA and it was not saving. For some reason, it was not moving. Was I missed something?
So it does at the end. So let's go through and
Just the saving part. I know you told me it's almost take a minute, but I think it just was not clicking anything. So I don't know if I missed something.
So there should be, it does take a little bit of time for the actual report to generate. So when you go ahead and click Save CMA Only up here in the top right-hand corner, and let me go ahead and do that. See how these buttons up at the top are sort of grayed out or blurred out, and you can see the spinning wheel like it's working.
Right.
Once it actually generates, you should either get one of two things. If it's a brand new report, it's going to ask you to identify a client to attach to that report before it saves it. If you skip that step, then it won't save your report. Okay. In this case, because we are updating the report, it's going to automatically save the update without asking me again for the client information. So I just have to click OK. Once I click OK, I can go back to my CorePRESENT. And I can see now that I have two versions of this project, not just one. And if I wanted to see those versions, I can just click on this caret to the left to be able to see. And now today, obviously, I've created both the same day, but in my example, you would see one created in December and then the next one created in February. You can go back, you can take this CMA and use it in a web presentation. So if you're actually going to sit with your client and go through this CMA in person, maybe on a tablet or a laptop, you can do that. If you wanted it in print form, you can also refer to the PDF button to be able to create a PDF that you can print in color if you have a client that you feel might be more comfortable with paper. But just understand you lose a tremendous amount of functionality when you do that. The other cool thing that I mentioned, not just the interactive component of CorePRESENT, but another piece of it that's really important and valuable to you as the agent is the analytics that CorePRESENT will produce. So when we did our first example with Legion, I showed you the client experience. So as a client, as Deanna Brown, I clicked on the presentation, I looked through it, I clicked on a couple of properties, and now that information is going to translate back to kvCore to help Deanna, the agent, understand where the seller was focused. Okay, so take a look, and just to make sure I didn't miss anybody, when I go, this was the first presentation that I created. If you go here under analytics, you'll see it's no longer grayed out. Now it's black. That's because now there's data. This one is grayed out because there's no data. In my case, it's because I haven't sent it. But if you continue to see gray here, that could suggest that your client's not even opening it. Okay, and that's important to know too. But you can click on analytics and you're going to be able to see how much time the client spent reviewing that CMA, what slides they viewed, how many of them they actually spent time on. And then if you scroll down, of those 4 slides, it'll tell you where they spent the most time. Obviously, the most time was what they call the big picture scale. That was the dollar outline. That was the way that I described it. So when I click on this, it'll actually tell me where on that screen they clicked. So if there were specific properties that the seller looked at, and you can't necessarily, I have to zoom in there. Hopefully you can see that now. If there were specific properties that the seller clicked on in reviewing my CMA, you're going to be able to see that here. Okay. Now, I think part of the problem is that I probably, when I was going over the slide with you, I must have been going mouse crazy, because I think every time that I did this with my mouse, that's what you're seeing, all this like blotter look. But in actuality, if a seller were to click on the properties, you're going to be able to see that with these big purplish circles. That's going to tell you what they clicked on. So maybe if you see that there was one particular property that was of interest to them, you can easily work that into the conversation when you talk about the listing price or value for their home. Especially, let's say they know that that's their neighbor's house up the street, and they might feel very passionate about how their price should be listed compared to that other property. Again, now you see where their mindset is and how they're reviewing the data to help shape the conversation when you actually review this with them and ultimately secure the listing and land on a list price. Okay. So that's the idea of a CMA. Again, the biggest features here are really understand the interactive qualities of CorePRESENT and leverage the analytics. What I also want to show you is what happens when you take a CMA and continue on to the next step. What if you moved on to create a presentation, an actual listing presentation? As we do that, I'm going to make one mention of something that you can do. You don't have to do. There are a number of slides that are preset in CorePRESENT that are available to you as the presentation automates and builds out. But you can add customization here as well in the presentation library. Now, what I happen to do is, if you spend any time in the Marketing Center, in eXp's Marketing Center, there's a really good PowerPoint presentation that I believe was recently revamped that has some good content in it. And there are a number of slides. I haven't gone through and edited all the slides, but there are a number of slides that I like. I like the cover slide. There are a couple of things. I like the slides here, tell me about your house. I have some important questions for you. These are slides that I really like in a listing presentation that help drive the conversation, help you be a good listener, and really understand, again, motivations and priorities of a seller to help you secure the listing, to speak to the needs of the seller and secure the listing. So my point is, though, that I downloaded this PowerPoint, and I really do like some of the slides here. So I saved a couple of these slides individually as PDFs as I edited them and branded them to myself for me as the agent. I saved them individually as PDFs, and then I was able to go here in CorePRESENT to add slides. Just click on Add a Slide. And what I did, now you can build a slide right here, or you can scroll down and import a slide. So what I did was I just clicked on Upload Presentation, clicked on Add PDF, and then I just went ahead and added in the slide. I knew where I saved it on my desktop, grabbed the file, and just added it as a PDF. I didn't worry about pulling in the PDF version here because I really expect to concentrate with my CorePRESENT entirely through digital platforms. Whether I'm doing a web presentation or I'm emailing a link, texting a link, I don't expect to do any PDF printouts. So I just uploaded the web version here in PDF format. Okay, it'll prompt you. It'll say, oh, you forgot the PDF version. You can just say okay and click through it. Okay. When you upload the slide, you just have to give it a name, which you'll do here. And then you add it to a category. It's automatically, anytime you upload content of your own, It's going to automatically drop it into a category called Introduction. Okay. Once you're satisfied that you've uploaded it, named it, and got it saved to Introduction, you can just click on Save and Add to Library. And then what that does is it adds this introduction section. So these other sections here, the right fit, home worth, market analysis, these are all defaults. These are where all of the pre-designed slides are going to exist in CorePRESENT. But now introduction is where I've gone ahead and added a few of these customized slides. What I like about this and what I think is important is that I love so much the functionality of CorePRESENT. I love the way that the client can really get involved in the experience, that they're not just, clicking from slide to slide, but it really, their experience is going to be driven by what motivates them, where they have the ability to click and get results, sort of addressing that like instant gratification society that we're in. But the problem is, this is a kvCore platform, so there's nothing that really specifically screams EXP or screams me other than the bio slide. So that's why I really like the ability to add custom slides of your own so that you can, in certain points in your presentation, reinforce EXP. Okay, so that's how you can go ahead and add content of your own to the presentation library. So let's say I want to create everybody's head here. I created a presentation earlier today for 549 Madison, another active listing on the MLS. Okay, so let's say I want to go ahead and update this. And I just want to talk you through, what's going to happen. Initially, you're working on the CMA components, and then we're going to get to the slides and the presentation components, okay? So here on the CMA piece, I'm going to have the same ability, just like we've talked about before, about expanding geography, zoning in on geography, changing criteria, adding manual additions, all can be done here. Once I'm satisfied with whatever is pulling into the search, so in this case, we have a few active matches and some sold matches, okay? So next I can build the CMA, or I can skip to the presentation. Just for sake of experience, I'm just going to take you through and show you, as you build out the CMA first, it's going to take you to the same next step. This is going to be a little bit of what the client is going to be looking at, right? But here you can go ahead and add some of your own custom features. If you wanted to add other estimates that were coming from other sources, maybe even if you had like a recent appraisal on the property or something, you can add that here as well. So you can continue to make adjustments and edits on this screen as well. You can also enter a price point here right on this screen, or you can give the seller a range. And once you click add, it will add that into this slide in the presentation, okay? You're going to have those same tiles down at the bottom. Remember in my last example, when we did Legion, we couldn't see fresh versus stale. Now that's going to be available to us because we have active properties in our CMA search. We have active comps, okay? So now let's say we're satisfied with the CMA piece. We want to continue to build out our presentation. So we're going to click on, instead of Save CMA, we're going to click on Create Presentation. Again, it's going to take a little bit. So as long as you see that box blued out and you see that sort of that hourglass effect working, let it go. It's doing its job. Okay, so now we're into the presentation mode, not unlike PowerPoint, maybe kind of a little bit along those lines. Now, I had already created this presentation, remember. This is not one that we just now started from scratch. So it remembers when I created the presentation the first time that I added one of my custom slides here to do that. So it's telling me there are 6 sections in my presentation. I'm in the first section for company presentation, and I just clicked on this add button. Once I click on add, it's taking me to my introduction folder, to those slides that I told you that I liked from the EXP listing presentation that I might want to be able to leverage in my kvCore CorePRESENT presentations. So I happen to choose the cover slide, okay? Once you choose the slides, you can either just click on it to include it or unclick it to pull it out if you don't want that slide included in your presentation. So let's go ahead and leave that one there.
For the branded slides, can you change the color on those?
That's a really good question. So what you'll want to do is definitely for these slides, I just pulled this presentation directly from the EXP Marketing Center.
Mm-hmm.
Once you download the content into PowerPoint to be able to edit it yourself, you can make changes. Like here, let's see if I can play around a little bit. Okay, so here, like if you didn't like blue and wanted to go with a different color, you would just, within PowerPoint, no longer in the Marketing Center, but within PowerPoint, you can just go ahead and if I right click on it, like I highlight it and right click, I can change the fill color.
Okay. All right.
Like that sort of thing. I'm not sure with this, those types of things you can change. Now, to be honest with you, I don't know about this, like the background photo. I don't think. You have to be really careful with photos because of like, I think copyright issues. And so if you're using this, if you're leveraging this, you don't have to worry about the photos being an issue. You can assume that EXP took care of all that. But if you don't like this photo, but you like the idea of having this like cover slide, you can certainly take the EXP logo and you can build a slide yourself here in, I can't show you right now because I'm in the middle of the presentation, but where I showed you where you can upload the slides,
Right.
That's where you can go to actually build a slide, and you can choose from all of those different formats to build a slide out right there.
And what if you had slides in Canva that you wanted to, that you built yourself with the EXP logo, with the colors and everything?
So what you want to do is once you have those slides built out, you want to convert those to PDFs.
Okay.
And then once you convert them to a PDF, you would go, and I'll show you that again once we get through this presentation,
Okay.
but you would want to go back to that, the presentation library, and upload a PDF of that slide. And then you would name it, whatever, you know, if it's if it's your biography slide, if it's your introductory slide, whatever. So here, I'm going to go back in one more time and just go ahead and select my cover slide. Once I click on it, I can click on the green button to add it to my presentation. Just like in PowerPoint, like you do have the ability to slide the individual slides back and forth in the order in that particular section of your presentation, okay? The presentation model itself does have a lot of presets to it. So I went ahead and added that slide in the intro. If I take a look at why am I the right fit, this is my biography slide. This is a kvCore slide that, remember, is pulling in my bio from my kvCore account that you can choose to enhance further in CorePRESENT should you wish. And then these are some of the other slides that talk about, you know, why me? You can choose to include them, exclude them, or add. The way that you would do that is you can just click in this section, you can click on add a slide. And let's say right now it's graying out the ones that are included. Let's say I didn't want this slide. I just click on it and now it's pulled it out of the presentation, okay? Click on it again and it inserts it back in. Maybe I also want to include testimonials. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that to include it in my presentation. If this is a presentation for a seller, maybe it's also important to me, if it's a seller that hasn't sold the house in 20 years, that I give them an outline of what the process is going to look like. So I'm going to include that slide. But then there's also, this is a great slide, by the way. We talked about express offers a couple of weeks ago. If you have any interest in being certified in express offers and having that potential conversation about whether express offers might be a selling solution for a seller, for a client, then certainly this is a great slide to have in your presentation. If you really don't think that that's the conversation you want to have, then you just click on it and pull it out, okay? And once I make those changes, I'm going to go ahead and hit save, and it's going to let me work through all of the sections of the presentation, okay? You'll want to get familiar with the content so that, again, you want to know what your client is going to experience. Remember, we talked in the beginning too about customization features, not just with your bio and with your testimonials, but with the look, right? So maybe as you go through these slides for this particular client, you think they might like more of a luxury feel. So you can just go ahead right here at the top and click on luxury. And then even within luxury, you're going to get options that are more graphic intense or less graphic intense, more color rich, less color rich. Okay, so again, this is all about personal preference for you, matching branding for you and appreciating what your client in any given situation might respond well to. Okay, once you're done and you've gone through and are satisfied with all of the slides and the presentation as it's put together, you next go up to the top and click Present and Share. So what it's going to do is, just like with the CMA, it's going to take a minute to prepare the presentation. Because this is a project that I already created for the first time, it's recognizing that I assigned this to Deanna Brown from my kvCore contact list. If this was a brand new project, then this would be blank, and I would have to click on it and then identify the client from my CRM that I wanted to tag to this project. Okay. Once I tag the person or people that I want to share this presentation with, then I have the options of, do I want to email the presentation? Do I want to add a link? Or do I want to copy this link here that I can then turn around and send in a text message? Like, you can pull this from kvCore on your phone to send it through text if you think that the client would want to do that. Full disclosure, I have not tested this out on a mobile device. It does, I'm told, have mobile functionality, but you might, again, when we talk about homework, spending a little time running these features for your own property, try that out. Send yourself the mobile link so that you can see how the mobile experience will be, especially with some of your younger or more tech savvy sellers. You're going to want to understand that experience so that you don't have to worry about them not being impressed by the technology, okay? But let's say I wanted to go ahead and email the presentation. It's always going to prompt me to create content for my email. So say, okay, so let's just say I send a message. I can preview that message if I want to see what it's going to look like. This is the actual email message that the client will receive. If I didn't like it, I could go back and edit it, or I can go ahead and hit send. Once I hit send, let me just jump over here. And now you'll see, coming from Deanna Faye Brown, the agent, to Deanna Brown, the client, here's the email with the message. And now here's a link to the presentation. So if I click on the link, again, I'm the client. I click on the link, and now it's going to take me to a web-based version of my presentation, beginning with my intro slide. Okay, adding the slides that we talked about. Remember, my last edit before we finalized the project, I went with that modern view. So you'll see how the slides change a little bit in their layout based on that. Okay, starting to identify, why me, the value proposition. The presentation is going to have the same, I shouldn't send my mouse all over the screen, I should learn my lesson, but the presentation is going to have the same functionality that the CMA did, where the client can click on a property right on the dollar line, or the big picture outline, I think they called it, to be able to click through properties, see details of properties. It's all going to be the same. Okay. Let's see, here's another one. Okay. Same thing. I can click through pictures. I can scroll on the left and say, oh, I saw this property. I wonder how this property compares to my listing. Oh, it's new construction. Okay. So again, it's all part of the seller's experience. Continuing to work through. Remember that these are all slides that you can add or remove to any presentation. Here's another interactive slide that pulls from the CMA, those tiles like we talked about earlier. And then again, some additional slide content to round out a robust presentation. And then finally, the thank you slide. Okay. At the end, you'll notice that there is the ability for the client to say, yes, I'm ready to go, or I need more time or information. So again, that's all going to feed back into your analytics as you try to build out, what you're, now that you've given them data, how do you center the conversation about best ways to secure the listing? So one thing that I want to mention, I'll just show you an example before we go back to kvCore as the agent for analytics purposes. I do just want to mention too that you as the agent will receive email confirmation when a client has reviewed a presentation. So not when they've opened it, but when they've closed it. This can be great for you to understand, maybe you send it to them at 9 o'clock in the morning, but you know that they're not going to see that presentation until they get home from work, 6 or 7 o'clock tonight. You're going to get that email notification that tells you, hey, they just closed the presentation. So now you can time your follow-up communication with them based on that time frame. If you want to call them right away, if you want to give it a half an hour, and maybe they'll think that you just have mental telepathy. and that will help lead them to you as being the right agent. But again, analytics are a really tremendous tool available to you in this platform. So now me as the client, I'm going to go ahead and click out of the presentation. Let me hop back over to kvCore and CorePRESENT. I'm going to go back to my home. And now let's take a look at 549 Madison. Now notice 549 Madison is now at the top of my list. That's because it's the most recent project that I've worked on. And I now have 3 versions available to me, and I can click on those to see them. The second version we sort of suspended in the middle, and I never quite finished when we were talking about customizing some slides. So I'm actually, for my own purposes as the agent, just going to remove that slide, that presentation. It's going to prompt me. I'm going to go ahead and delete it. So now I'm just going to be left with that very first presentation I created this morning and then the one I just updated. Now notice in both cases, my analytics bars are darkened, which means that there is data available. So let me click on the one that relates to the project we just completed and sent over. So again, you're going to be able to see how much time the seller or the client spent viewing the slides. You're going to see where they spent most of their time. So maybe they spent a lot of time on testimonials, which tells you that they really want to understand your character. And it's important to them that they have references about how you work as a real estate agent. That's good insight. Maybe they were really trying to understand pricing misconceptions, which might tell you that they're worried about pricing and need your confidence and guidance to help give them confidence in the transaction. Anytime that you see these little circles grayed out, that means that there wasn't any click on that slide embedded in that slide. But when you see it green like this, then that means that there was some click that happened inside that slide. And if you see, if I scroll over it, you see those purple dots. Those purple dots are going to tell you, those darker purple dots here will tell you what properties the client clicked on and reviewed. Okay. So this has been our look at CorePRESENT, where you have functionality built right into your kvCore account to not only help you build a fully functional, highly interactive CMA report, but you can then extend that report into your listing presentation as well. Take that CMA opportunity to the next level with CorePRESENT. So now it's time to say, what's the homework? Well, first, take action. Go into your kvCore, find CorePRESENT. Make sure you know how to access it. Make sure that you take the time to beef up your testimonials and your biography so that when you get to the point where you build a CMA and then populate it into a listing presentation, all of that data is populated as well and ready to go. Remember, your biography and your testimonials are all going to lend to your credibility when you go to secure a listing. Explore and experience the CMA builder itself by using your own home as a test case, and experience it, like I always say, from both the perspective of an agent and a client. It's very important in my eyes that you understand the experience of the client so that you can best help them navigate the home buying or home selling process. Once you've taken those action steps, make sure that you also explore the listing presentation materials that are available to you in the eXp Marketing Center to continue to add depth and branding to your kvCore presentation. Remember, any templates that are available to you from within kvCore will not be branded. So you want to make sure that you take those extra steps to not only make it personal to you, but make it branded to your eXp brokerage as well. And so let's look ahead. We've now wrapped up week 4 with our time on CorePRESENT. Be sure to continue to follow the YouTube channel to find more of our training sessions. And next week, with sessions 5 and 6, we're going to dive into kvCore for marketing campaigns and newsletter creation. Thank you so much for joining us.